So, this is the second chapter of the media and the public policy, paper one, history of media and media litigation in India. 2.1, the Bengal Gazette. The media history in India begins with the launching of various news journals by European and Anglo-Indian journalists during the second half of 18th century. The first newspaper was the Bengal Gazette, which Mr. Hicksey started as a weekly in 1780. The arrest of the editor Hickey for criticizing the policies of the Governor General Warren Hastings was the starting point of the struggle for the liberty of the press. The next Governor General Lord Cornwallis had a conflict with Mr. Duana, the editor of Indian World. Duana was the next journalist who was arrested for opposing the policies of the government. The muzzling of the press continued when some more Anglo Indian journalists were either censured, arrested, or pressurized by the government in general in succession. To counter the spread of French invasion, the British India rulers wanted to suppress the criticism in press and brought the censorship law in 1799. Censorship law in 1799, which was the beginning of the oppressive legislation against the print media. So the news was made to disclose the names of the publisher and editors as legal obligation. The censorship laws were slightly modified. Press was not free as they were directed not to publish anim, animate, anim, animadverting reactions to the authorities. Political transactions or offense remarks against the public conduct of the public officers. Judges, Bishop of Calcutta discussion having a tendency to create alarm or suspicion among the natives as to any intended influence with their religion. They were very opposing the republication of what appeared in British journals against the British administration. End of censorship. During 1880, the censorship of the press was abolished, which led to emergence of new journals like Calcutta Journal from J.S. Buckingham. Even the Chief Justice of Supreme Court, the Governor of Madras, the Lord Bishop of Calcutta, could not escape the sharp criticism from the bold and fearless journalist Buckingham. Like two earlier journalists Hickey and Duane, he was also deported from the country and sent to England. Murnau reforms and the press. The government of India asked Sir Thomas Murnau to study the conditions of the press in India. In his report, he expressed fears and apprehensions against the press owned by the people of Indian origin and found no threat from the European journalist. He recommended for the continuance of the power to deport the journalist out of country and censorship against the defamed press. He saw a growing power in the press which could even overthrow the British power and spread nationalist thoughts. After accepting the recommendations of Murnau, the government of India came out with newspaper regulations and introduced licensing system. No newspaper or book can be published without the license being obtained for that purpose. Every such publication after the license has to be submitted for the scrutiny by the officials. The government was empowered to stop the circulation of any newspaper or book by publication of mere notice in the Gazette. Despite the protest from Raja Ram Mohan Roy and Dwaraknath Tagore, the new regulations that were placed before the Supreme Court in March 1823 came into force on 15th April 1823. Sir Metcalfe's contribution. These regulations were in force till 1835, where Sir Charles Metcalfe, with assistance from Lord Macula, who was the law member of the government, for having freed the press in India on par with English press, Lord Metcalfe were recalled. However, the Calcutta city honoured him by building a hall in his name, but the freedom for the regulation did not continue beyond 1857, as the immunity was the new ground for British Indian rulers to reimpose the restrictions of the press. Act 15 of 1857 was enacted to regulate the establishment of printing presses and to restrain in certain cases the circulation of printed books and papers. These restrictions were withdrawn after mutiny. The vernacular press. After the first freedom struggle in 1857, the vernacular press came into being. Bengali and Amrit Bazar Patrik in Bengal came into being. Bengali Patrik in Bengal and Akhbar EM at Lahore were started as news weeklies. A new Act 25 of 1867 has replaced Act of 1835. The new act intends to regulate the printing press and newspaper and also to preserve copies of books and also restrictions on those books. The Press and Books Registration Act of 1867 is still in force with some amendments in 1893 and 1940. Vernacular Press Act. The Vernacular Press Act has brought into force with a great speed as that was introduced within just 2 hours after sanction was obtained from Secretary of State of India through a telegram. Lord Lytton engineered this draconian law against native press because of the increasing violence of the native press directly provocate of rebellion. Very soon, the act gained a name as the Ganging Act, according to which the magistrate with the previous sanction of provisional government can require a printer or a publisher to deposit a security or enter into a bond binding himself not to print or publish anything likely to incite the feelings of disaffection towards the government or hatred between the different races of India. The government has enormous power to warn the press and confiscate the missionary. The printer was having only one chance of escaping the clutches of the draconian law only by submitting the proofs to the officials and dropping all the rejected matter. After passing this act within a year, the entire vernacular press in India was muzzled. Indian people strongly resented the legislation that imposed severe curbs on free flow of information and criticism. A big meeting was organized in Town Hall of Calcutta, which was the starting point of the virulent attack against the Gangling Act. Sir Feronzaj Mehta said it was wrong to curb the vernacular press, which was neither disloyal nor conveying treasonable ideas. The honest and useful criticism was annihilated by the vernacular press, and the print media was still in the stage of infancy. According to the Modi, the act was utterly uncalled for, unduly repressive in character, and inspired by sinister motives. It was draconian piece of legislation based on Irish Coalition Act of 1870 and in some respects brought into existence to deal with special emergency. Sir Erskine Perry was the opinion that the act was a retrograde and ill-convinced measure injurious to future progress of India. He said no imperial legislative could forego a more powerful weapon for extirpating on obnoxious press. British rulers were feeling that it was not safe to make Indian press free, as that would definitely affect the interests of the British dominance over the subcontinent, and wanted the regulations to continue. It was difficult for the successor of Lord Lytton to tackle the agitating press and growing national struggle. After the Conservative government lost in the elections, the Gladstone led the Liberal government. There was a change in Indian administration. Lord Lytton was recalled and Lord Ripon was appointed. He too could not reveal the Vernacular Press Act at once. However, Ripon could not retain beyond 1882, which act angered the British rulers, though was praised by Indians. The press and freedom struggle. I love this. The partition of Bengal was one of the painful historic events in the history of Indian struggle for freedom and evolution of the press as a power of the media. Lord Curzon and his anti-Indian policies were responsible for intensifying the agitation. Indian nationalistic movement was growing with sole mission to throw out the Englishmen's bag and baggage from the country. The oppressive legislation and repressive measures were fueling the burning of agitation. Then the British brought another legislation to curb the press freedom. The Newspapers Incitement of Offences Act 1908. The Newspapers Incitement of Offences Act 1908 was passed. This is 2.8, okay? Was passed if any newspapers was. I think I should do another video. It's almost nine minutes. So I will do another video on 2.8. The Newspapers Incitement of Offences Act 1908.